that still surround this as yet unsolved crime mystery, and possibly the greatest unsolved crime mystery of all time. I go for that Prozac. Anyway, so where is the East End of London where these 5 murders happened? Well, the East End is easily definable. It's defined by this wall over here. Well, there's the underground there where you are. But there's a wall behind there as well. And it's basically medieval from around the 14th century, below which are the Roman foundations of a wall that once surrounded what's now known as the City of London, the square mile, the financial district. Now we're just inside of the old city itself, but as soon as we venture through the wall, so to speak, we're venturing towards the east side or east end of London itself, where those 5 murders happened. Now by the 1880s, the East End had turned into the worst and most notorious slum in the whole of London. Now, I'm somewhat surprised that we had a slum at all in those days. Why? Because of the height of our glorious British Empire. It's all gone now. But literally on the other side of the most powerful city and port in the world was a third world situation. Just to give us some idea of how appalling conditions were, they estimated 55% of children under the age of 5 were dying as a result of malnutrition or disease. Though the average life expectancy for a man in the East End was only around 30 years old. Now that compared literally just 4 miles in that direction in the rather wealthy West End of London, where it was 55 years old. You know what, some people are literally scrapping through rubbish tips to make some kind of money. There's a wonderful Cockney expression, it says, what a load of tosh, what a load of old tosh that is, mate. Meaning what a load of old rubbish, you see. Now this comes from a guy called a tosher, who used to go down into the sewers picking up bits and pieces to sell. Ugh. You also have mudlarks, boys and girls, men and women who go down to the docks. And in between the ships and barges at low tide, they'd be fiddling around in the mud, sometimes up to their waists in the middle of winter, looking for little bits and pieces that have fallen off the back of a ship. In other words, it was ghastly, dreadful, it was appalling. Now you may well ask, good grief, that sounds absolutely dreadful it was. What was the reason for that then? Well, it was industrialisation. From the 1820s, 30s onwards, heavy industry began to move and shift towards the capital itself. Now, where do you shove those nasty, filthy, stinking, horrible and smelly factories? And we're talking about the worst of them: tanning industries, brewing industries, sugar refining industries, matchmaking industries, slaughterhouses, glue factories, that kind of stuff. Well, there was no way you could dump those factories in the West End of London. Why? Because the West End's rather posh and it's all rather lovely. Knightsbridge, Belgravia, Mayfair, Harrods, Harvey Nichols. So you couldn't shove them there. Neither could you put them in the City of London. It's the financial district. The East End was perfect to dump those industries. Why? Well, for a start, the land is flat, being in the Thames Basin. In other words, tributaries of water flowing into the Thames, ideal for things like the brewing industry and the tanning trade. Also, they started to build the docks around here from 1802 onwards. But more importantly than all those factors put together, the prevailing wind blows in that direction, away from everyone else. Keep that noise pollution and stink well away from us. So they dumped the heavy industry in the East End, it attracted the working labouring classes, and descended into a spiral of abject poverty and degradation. Now, you may well ask, good grief, that sounds absolutely appalling. You're absolutely right. What was there any reason then for a middle class or upper class person to actually want to visit the East End in those days? Yes, there was, because you could have a great time slumming it in the old East End, you could. Now, one of the enjoyments of slumming it was to visit the music hall. Now, the music hall started off as a small pub entertainment known as a penny gaff or a burst. Now, it's called a burst because generally the acts were so appalling, we were deliberately brought in empty paper bags. So halfway through, they go, bang, like that. Now, to give you an idea of the quality of some of these acts, there was a woman who was singing by going, so rubbish, get off. And there was a voice in the back saying, come on, give the poor cow a chance. And she stopped singing and said, well, at least there's one gentleman in the audience. And there we are. Now, this has spread to over 200 theatres around London, and by the 1890s, more like 500 theatres around London. And Marie Lloyd was queen of the halls. She was a huge mega singing star. In fact, by the age of 16, she was earning well over £100 a week, which in the 1880s was a heck of a lot of money. She'd be singing songs such as, the boy I love, he's up in the gallery. The boy I love is waving there with me. And a little what you fancy, don't you? Good. Have a banana. Now, she'd also sing rather risque songs as well. Things like The Girl Who'd Never Had a Ticket Punch Before, about the railways. And she sits amongst the cabbages and leeks. Another version of that, she sits amongst the lettuces and peas. So you could come over here and visit one of the music halls. You'd also come over here and get legless and sloshed in one of the many gym palaces and pubs that litter the East End. In fact, Edward VII used to come over here in disguise and go to one of his favourite bars. It was called the Old Mahogany Bar, and they used to go and watch a couple of women mud wrestling. It all happened in the rookie 90s. Another reason for a gentleman was to leave his club, St James's in the West End, say, get into his hansom cab, go across the cobbles, through the fog to the East End, was perhaps to pick up a girl, yes. Colloquially speaking, a bit of rough. Because by the time we got over here, She probably was. Now what we're going to do is nip down here. We want to see another piece of the wall. We're going through it this time. We're going under and through an old Victorian railway arch. And it's there I should be telling you about the first horrific murder. Shocking stuff. So we're going down these stairs bearing slightly left and then right. These.